Hello, fellow cyborgs. Now that it's practically Thanksgiving in America, I thought I'd talk to you about my Halloween reads. So I read 3 specifically Halloween-y themed books before Halloween. I don't know how to talk anymore. I'm gonna run through them pretty quick and tell you my thoughts. I attempted to reread Poems Bewitched and Haunted, edited by John Hollander, but this really fell to the back seat. I found it kind of difficult to stay awake and read before bed, so I only got through maybe 10 poems, and I definitely started just rereading the poems I liked the first go around rather than all of them, which was my intention. So this was kind of a botched rereading experience, but that's okay. These atmospheric poems helped me get into the spooky mood, but I didn't spend as much time on this reread as I was hoping to. I reread The Halloween Tree by Ray Bradbury and liked it. The first time I read this years ago, I gave it 5 stars and did not write a review. Now I'm thinking that I gave it 5 stars because it's Bradbury and I decided that I loved him. This reading experience was a lot less positive, but it was still interesting. I think I gave this 3 out of 5 stars, mostly because it's Bradbury still. So in this, we follow, what's his name? Tom? We have Tom and his 8, I don't know, friends, and they have like a super awesome friend named Pipkin who's amazing, and the text spends an entire chapter telling you why Pipkin is the most amazing boy ever and why you should love him. But then Pipkin is like sick and he doesn't go trick-or-treating with them, and then they go to this cool like creepy mansion, which was the best part, like on the outskirts of town, best part of the whole book, and they find this Halloween tree, which is a tree with all these jack-o'-lanterns, and it's super cool. And then they meet Mr. Moundshroud. We don't know who he is, but he's magical and spooky. And then suddenly the shadows take Pipkin, and now they have to go on an adventure with Mr. Moundshroud, not only because he offered, but also because Pipkin has been kidnapped. The rest of the plot is this really like weird mix of dreamlike imagery bursts where the boys are half on an adventure with Mr. Moundshroud to learn about the origins of Halloween and half on a rescue mission to get Pipkin back. And that's where this plot fell short. It's like there are no stakes when the kids are just exploring with Mr. Moundshroud, and then suddenly Pipkin will call out pitifully and they remember that their friend is in danger, as if they had forgotten in the intervening moments. There are also way too many friends in this group. I don't even remember how many children there are. And the only reason why there are so many boys in this group is that each of their costumes that they dressed up as, we learn about the origins of that costume and how that affects the origins of Halloween. So we have a mummy and we go to ancient Egypt, and we have a beggar and we talk about the Irish famine. Questionable. This is definitely beautifully written, but I think that the way that it was written, this is much more poetry than plot. I would have much preferred if there had been more build-up and prologue to before we meet Mr. Moundshroud. I would have loved for this to just be Tom and Pipkin, maybe a sidekick, maybe a dog or a cat. And we see through Tom interacting with Pipkin why Pipkin is awesome. And then Pipkin is kidnapped, and Mr. Moundshroud helps Tom save his friend. I wish that Bradbury had either written like a series of poems exploring the origins of Halloween, or written a story about how a group of boys have to save their kidnapped friend, but he put them together and they didn't quite work. Interesting. I'll probably reread it after I forget how frustrating this is because of how great it could have been, but it's definitely not my favorite Bradbury. And then we have The Legend of Sleepy Hollow and Other Macabre Tales by Washington Irving, which I DNF'd pretty darn quick. So I attempted 4 stories in here. I read Rip Van Winkle, which was just all about Rip, who is useless and has a wife who nags him because she's reliant upon him to feed her and his children, and he just wants to derp around all day with his dog, and all we hear is about how awful this woman is. And then he falls asleep for 20 years and whatever. Then I read The Spectre Bridegroom, which also had a pair of matronly aunts who all they do is nag and criticize, and we hate them for some reason. And then there's this like uncomfortable like bridegroom switcheroo, and it was whatever, a misogynist casually. And then there's The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, which is amazing. Racist at times, not like overly, but it's there. But it is so autumnal. Very funny. It's amazing how much the Disney short animation nailed these characters, which seemed absolutely laughable when I was watching that cartoon. It's all in here. It's funny, it's spooky, it talks about place in rural northern New York. Upstate New York is how they call it. There's a lot of ghost story talk in here, so it's got spooky ghost story atmosphere. And then we also have a couple autumnal feasts, and it's just like, tell me more about this food, please. I can smell it. I want apple cider. Ichabod is not the best person, so it's fun to laugh at him because he is ridiculous. There's a little bit of casual racism sprinkled in. And then we've got the Headless Horseman. This was just wonderfully written. I have since purchased the audiobook because I'm not keeping this on my shelves for one good story and a bunch of crap. I am disappointed about the, casual racism, but overall, I think for a historical artifact that isn't perfect, it is going to be lovely revisiting this story and getting me ready for the autumnal spooky vibes. So The Legend of Sleepy Hollow was definitely the highlight of my spooky reading experience, but that's not gonna read the rest of this. So those were the Halloweeny reads that I recently read. Thank you for watching, and until next time, continue to be lovely.